Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Free Marketeers. This is the first time in, I think, 2 weeks that we've done another episode, and we apologize for that. There's been a lot of traveling and some sick stomachs here and there, but
Are you feeling better now?
yes, no,
Okay.
I'm feeling
Very
great.
good.
I'm in
Okay.
tip-top shape.
I told you not to try too many different foods, but you didn't listen to me,
Right,
so.
yeah. But yeah, so we're back, hopefully, until the end of the year when we all depart for our little holidays. What?
Well, I don't know where I'm going.
Oh, right, I'm sure. Yeah, maybe the Bahamas.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm taking my white Monopoly capital with me.
Yeah. Anyway, this has been a busy week, as many of you will know, as always in South Africa.
Mhm.
I think the biggest news item nowadays is the SAA strike.
Yep.
So South African Airways has cancelled all its flights. It was first on Friday, today, and Saturday. It's been taken through to Sunday now. So all international cargo and domestic flights have been cancelled. And they plan to resume international flights on Monday, I believe. But we never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I saw on your notes, Chris, that this started with them saying they want to retrench 900 workers.
Yeah.
And the unions obviously have a problem with, I guess they see this as the downsizing of the public sector wage bill, which is totally bonkers because I think there's 55,000 people work at SAA and like there's a fraction of that. But then obviously they upgraded their strike action to wage demands.
Yeah, and all sorts of other things as well.
Yeah, so they SAA offered them 5.9%, I believe, and they want 8.
Yeah.
My notes here say that the interim CFO, Dion Fredericks of SAA, says that the strike is threatening SAA's very existence.
Yes.
Now, I think that makes us quite excited.
I don't want to look too gleeful. I'm trying not to smile too broadly because we always say to the viewers we have bad news, but this is legitimately good news.
Yeah, the unions are helping us. I mean, this is a first in that, and I think this is great news. Even though it's going to be expensive, I mean, closing down a state-owned enterprise is not going to be cheap.
Yes.
But I think in the long term, it's going to be far better for us. I mean, you have notes here about how much SAA costs us a day.
Yeah. Well, we need to. We talked about this earlier in the week, sort of an internal meeting, but we need to always remember how much more SAA is going to lose in the future. So yes, it's going to be tough to close it down now, and it's expensive, but it's sort of an exponential increase all the time. It's not a case of next year it'll be another 2 billion or this or that. It's not small. I mean, a billion isn't a small number anyway, but we're playing in like the tens and twenties of billions here. So we need to take the pain now. We should have taken the pain long ago.
Yes.
But the longer we wait to take some tough medicine, the worse it is for the economy as a whole. And also, to the unions who are concerned about those job losses, it's a moral travesty to me that SAA has been getting government bailouts in the first place when government could have been using that for social welfare, for example. Yeah. If they're really concerned about helping poor people, give them a leg up kind of thing. And if the unions are concerned about workers and people who aren't earning a living, hold the executives of SAA accountable who get billions of dollars in bonuses and stuff every year, and then use that money for social welfare. I know it's weird, free marketers advocating for social welfare, but it's a trade-off.
Yeah, it's a lesser evil.
Yes, so you have to balance these things out. So yeah, it really needs to come to an end now, and I think we're seeing that. Pravin Gordon, I have a quote from him. He said, SAA is not too big to fail. And that to me is big because I wouldn't have expected him to ever say anything like that. Again, I don't want to get my hopes up, and he might now on the weekend turn around and simply tell Mr. Mboweni or someone else, give SAA the money that they need to tide them over and so that they can increase the wages. So it might all be for nothing, but at least he said that. So there's sort of this acknowledgement in government. Okay, Eskom might be too big to fail. We need to keep that alive and keep it going. But SAA, it's the end of the road.
Yeah. Mpiyakhe, so do you think this is the end of the road for SAA, or do you think we're gonna struggle along, or do you think finally we've hit a climax?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, looking into the crystal ball, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, government still has options, not good options, but they still have options.
Yeah.
So they can still could do things that are more harmful to the economy for the sake of keeping this one company alive. I'm not saying it's a good thing that the company is collapsing or that all these jobs are going to be lost. But it's if you can there's a concept in finance where like it's a standard practice where, for example, if you want to buy a share, you will calculate the future value of the price of the share right now, and then you will see if it makes sense for you to spend money on the share. And so when it comes to SAA, what is it costing us in terms of what, and then what will it cost us in the future, and then what we can determine what the current value of the future costs that are going to come from the SAA in future. And so it's something that it's a real problem. We can't just say, okay, no, SAA, like, let's keep it at all costs because it's going to cause so much disruption. Yes, we will suffer costs now, but then we are still going to suffer costs in the future and so on. And so this is, if the cost of closing it down now unceremoniously like this, of course I would have preferred that the many plans to sort of unwind it down slowly and gradually were adopted by government earlier. We have been telling them to close this company down for ages and ages. And so if they had adopted one of those rational plans that would have minimized the disruption, then it would have been better for everyone. But they didn't. So that's why we are here. And so does anyone really believe that it is better for the country that you have a company that can't cut its costs, that has to keep asking for bailouts over and over and over again, like with the tax implications of that, while our debt financing costs are the fastest growing expenditure item, tax revenues are declining. And so in that situation, what is best? Do you keep on just doing the same thing over and over again for a thing that no one really needs? I mean, it's not like we don't have other serious problems to take care of. The people forget that this is a matter of trade-offs.
Yes.
So what are the alternatives? Okay, don't shut down SAA now. Keep on paying these taxes. Okay, and then what happens to the welfare budgets? What happens to the budgets of the NPA, the judicial system in this country, the criminal justice system, the police?
They've been the ones losing the most money, I think.
The police, the entire criminal justice cluster, which is the judiciary, police, and prosecution, all of those things. The government has been saving money using them, and this is a fallacy because people think, okay, welfare is more important than the criminal justice system. But if you talk to poor people and what the problems they face, you soon realize that the justice system is one of the key or core problems in their lives. Like basic things like, you are treated unfairly by some company or whatever it is. So you want to contest some their unfair treatment because they didn't follow the contract they signed with you, and then it becomes hard because there are so many barriers to accessing the courts. It's expensive and all of these things. These are issues that are not sexy for people, but these are the real issues that we need to resolve. And so if we are going to sustain these companies that are completely useless, like no one can tell me what we are losing by losing SAA. I mean, it's not that would be the first country. British Airways, even though it still has some government ownership, is now majority owned by the private companies. And the British don't have less pride because of that. They still just have as much pride.
Well, you would think you would take more pride in your airline, your national airline, if it's run well, if it makes some sort of profit, or at least if it breaks even. I don't think if we had, for example, this is a possible solution for SAA, they could sell the majority stake kind of thing, still be run by Emirates, Kenya Airways, take your pick, and then they could pay like a royalty fee to display the flag, like once a day in Atlanta, LA, London.
Mean, that's exactly the point that Eric Venter made at an event at the IFMF recently. I mean, the brand is separate from the institution. The brand itself can be sold to Emirates or Turkish Airlines, even to British Airways. I mean, it's a private company in Britain, but it still flies the flag. And in America, I mean, there are like 4 separate airlines that are a play on the name of the country and have the flag to various extents. I mean, the flag is being flown by private companies. So it's very possible. And I mean, the government has repeatedly said it's about tourism and getting people here and displaying the pride of South Africa. I mean, all those things are and can be provided by the private sector.
Well, now passengers are stranded right now because of the strike.
Exactly.
Like people all around the world and in the country are stuck. So at the moment, technically, you could only come here through Kenya, Emirates, maybe Etihad if you have the money, Delta and United.
Yeah.
Everyone knows, like, the name isn't even in Delta and United, but everyone knows those are American airlines.
Yeah.
So we all associate it with America.
Yeah,
and the private sector is stepping in to sort of try and fill this void. I'm sure, I even know Mango, for all their failings, the CEO today, Nico Besaidenote, he said he said Fridays are normally busy and today is a bit busier.
A little bit.
So he gave a little bit of a dig at SAA, and we know that whole thing with SAA and Mango. So even there, like, the private sector is going to try and fill the gap, and they're going to try and accommodate passengers. The fact that SAA, and I'm speaking from a position of ignorance, but it doesn't look like they made any provisions for these passengers. That's again, like, I mean, how do you treat customers like this? And they probably do it because they know if it comes to it and if government buckles, they can get a bailout.
Yes.
So they don't actually need to perform like a private airline would need to.
And even if they do get that bailout, I mean, now you have a whole bunch of international customers, both who were the ones who were inconvenienced and the ones who are reading about it in the international press, who are looking at this and saying, okay, I'm never flying with this company.
Flying the flag. They're representing us well.
And then one of the main arguments for keeping SAA was that, okay, it helps with tourism.
Yeah.
What happens to tourism now that their brand is taking such a hit from them not being able to offer these flights because of their disagreements with the unions representing workers? And so this is like, people should give us good alternatives because we have alternatives that we think are the best available right now. But if people are just complaining and say, oh no, you can't just shut it down, but they don't give us what are the alternatives?
Yes.
Like, should the Reserve Bank just start printing money? What are they saying?
They always say yes.
Probably.
Should our pensions be seized?
Well, I'm sure they're going to go with that anyway. So.
I mean, it's ridiculous. They're always going to appeal to the jobs that will be lost at SAA. But I mean, we've made this point repeatedly. The public sector wage bill is part of the reason our economy is being dragged down, and we need less civil servants, government employees, seriously less. And I mean, let's assume and give these people the benefit of the doubt and assume that they are skilled. Because if you're skilled, you're a professional administrator in SAA, you'll find a job. I mean, it's going to happen that private companies are going to fill the gap, and they won't need employees. They're not going to, unless it's perhaps a Chinese company, they're not going to bring a bunch of people from abroad. But if it's another private South African company, they're going to need skills. So let's give these people the benefit of the doubt that they will find work again, unless they are totally useless.
Who's going to launch Springbok Airlines? They should run with the good role from the World Cup.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
I think that's what
you should patent that.
Don't any of you use that?
No, I think that's what SAA used to be called before.
The call sign of the airplanes and the air traffic controllers was Springbok.
Oh, really?
It wasn't the airline's name, but it was the call sign. No, I mean that's a great idea. It's something to be proud about. So
Well, okay, we can touch on the rugby a little bit. The whole thing about efficiency and how things work together well. Obviously, it's a team game, so the players need to play well. They need to be selected for their roles. But they're selected on merit. Springboks wouldn't have won the World Cup if, and people will bring up quotas. Oh, the quotas. Well, I mean, there were black players in the team. And are you going to pick any better player than Siya Kolisi as an example? So SAA has not been run on merit measures. And we can see the effects of that. When it's protected from competition, when they keep on being bailed out, it's like they get rewarded for non-performance. For the worse they perform, the more they get. That's a very perverse thing.
And I think just another point about competition, in the sense that they are protected, in the sense that government funds SAA to the exclusion of every other airline. But unlike Eskom, there actually is competition. So if you work for SAA, you should be glad that there is competition. I mean, I would be more scared if I was a worker at Eskom because there's a legislated monopoly there. But it's SAA, you can, if you are good at your job, you can go to Mango, you can go to Kulula, you can go
and I mean the net loss for the country will be virtually zero, but with Eskom, because it's literally a monopoly, the loss to South Africa is unquantifiable. If Eskom goes down, it's over for all of us. So, I mean, it's just having someone compete with Eskom, and I mean, we can talk about Eskom, just having a little bit of competition that provides, like, imagine if there was one competitor to Eskom that just provides power to industrial areas. That could mean that South Africa could survive. If all residential areas go down, if everything goes down except the manufacturing, the factories, etc., there's like a chance.
There can still be some exports and stuff.
But we don't even have that. The only competition we have are the hopelessly inefficient renewables that I think require Eskom's coal-fired power station to operate, and some generators at home.
Yeah, you need the backup the whole time. Like when the wind turbines go down, they need to turn on like whatever they need from Eskom at any point. That's really not efficient.
And I mean, and obviously we all have generators, or many of us have generators, and the fuel price is going up. So I mean, they're gonna hit us with that anyway. So if you have a generator and Eskom goes down, it's gonna be a temporary solution at best. We need competition, but
and the renewables are not true competition because they are allocated a fixed part of the market. They said, okay, you can't grow beyond this. So, like, if for example, let's say the IPPs are given 25% of the market, that's not true competition because Eskom can bank on 75% of the market.
So Mpulelo Kabala on News 24 wrote.
Good job, Martin.
Did I fail?
No, I think it was okay. Coming from a white guy, I thought that was okay.
I feel confident. I feel confident. So he wrote in News 24, I think it was today, that he looked at Eskom's history, and he said Eskom's salvation basically lies in it being treated like a business. It should run like a business, and that's how it apparently used to be run. So it did receive an initial capital injection from government, but it didn't receive continuous funding, and it had to pay its capital injection back, and it was expected to raise its own funds, so it went on a capital raising initiative, and the public apparently, I struggle to believe this, but general members of the public said, hey, let me give some money to this company to try and get it to work. That's how Eskom was. And
that's sort of feeling of solidarity.
Yeah. So apparently
skin in the game.
I don't know if that would work today.
No.
But so he says that if Eskom returns to that and to non-racialism, he says that Eskom was founded on the principle of non-racialism in 1932. Was it? Yeah. Then even if the company is not a for-profit company, then it would do better at least than what it's doing today. What do you guys think about that? If without privatizing the organization, government just tells it, hey, you need to run like a business now, and we're not going to help you anymore. Would that work?
I think it could help. Like, I'm obviously against the premise of a state supplier of electricity, especially if it's the sole one. So if we do this sort of thing and also allow competition, then I could agree with that. It might be the best of a very difficult situation. I think the point of non-racialism in the article is very interesting, and the idea again of sort of appointing people on merit. And he quoted the motto that they had on at the entrance about working together for all South Africans irrespective of race, and for that to be said in 1932 South Africa is quite an anomaly. So that was very nice to see. That idea of working for the whole country and people buying into it. Maybe that idea also of individual ownership of your work and responsibility. Now it's sort of very, faceless, and you're just another part of this huge thing that's not held accountable. So there's nothing stopping you from working or not working in a way. If you don't work, well, you'll get more government money, so you'll be fine. So I'm in agreement with what he says, I think, in principle.
I would think that because there are so many economic problems with just having a monopoly, in the sense that you ban everyone else from providing the service. I think that's it. I can't predict when it would have collapsed, when it would have happened if everything else that's happening now was running well, like it was government had set up incentives. I mean, just to give you an example, Ethiopia, they've adopted this model to their own state-owned companies, where they provide, like, they just tell these people, okay, run it like a business, and then you'd be held accountable for profits and losses. China has done the same thing. But then Ethiopia is still experiencing economic problems despite all of these things.
Sure.
And so, like, they are now going on a privatization drive because to solve some of their economic constraints, because it does help to have a better management principles for your company, but there are all sorts of hidden costs if you have a monopoly. For example, just to give you an example, let's say Eskom is the biggest buyer of coal, but then it's the biggest buyer of coal, so it forces the people who sell the coal to sell at a price lower than what the market would offer. And then that's that distorts the entire market because now people can't express their preferences, and then maybe people would have spent more on coal if it was up to them, to their choice, and so the mines don't get the capital they need to invest and open up new mines and so on and so on. So there are all sorts of hidden costs that you can't really quantify. So you can't ever say that it would have collapsed now or when it would have collapsed, but these costs would have been paid in one way or another.
And when you have the monopoly, you have the issue with the coal, for example, the bigger chance for abuse and corruption, because then they know they've got Eskom sort of by the crown jewels, so they can dictate to them, you come to us, or you don't come to us, we can decide how much or not, because they know they've got Eskom in a difficult position. So if you're so worried about state capture and corruption, you should be for at least some sort of level of competition.
Yeah, decentralization is one of the best cures to corruption. I mean, you're diffusing the risk. So yeah, if anything else, I mean, that's why I always recommend that if Eskom is privatized, each power station, for example, should be sold to a different company, a real different company, not just a different company in name. Then Edward Zuma buys it with one company and then with another company. You don't want that, but you want to try and diffuse the risk as far as possible. Obviously, in a free market, if one company wants to then buy them all at some stage, it can. But do your best to diffuse that risk.
On that point, so even then, if a private company does buy all of them, it wouldn't be a monopoly. We also need to keep this in mind. A monopoly implies force. So the government is enforcing the Eskom monopoly. At least with airlines, there's some room for competition. Like when we think of TV and entertainment, obviously we all think of DSTV and MultiChoice, and people think they're a monopoly. But there is the opportunity for competition. We see it with Netflix now. Apple TV Plus launched this week, and it's available in South Africa. Disney Plus, it's not available in South Africa yet, but it's there. But there's a whole bunch of different options, at least.
Having said that, there are real serious barriers in the regulatory environment that you have. So this guy gets like the power stations without having to encounter any regulatory barriers. You just have enough money to buy them. And then everyone else who wants to start their own power station has to face regulatory barriers. And that's on its own can be a sort of unfairness.
Sure. So yeah, they have to deregulate as well. I mean, the idea that you need to register when you have solar panels or something, it's preposterous. Just leave these people alone. I mean, you got to privatize the grid, because the grid is going to have to be able to decide whether it allows X amount of current or whatever, otherwise the whole thing explodes or something. So yeah, when you go for privatization, you really do need to do it properly. So yeah, definitely the deregulation is a massive part of it. The people shouldn't, when we talk of privatization, this often happens. They say, it will just end up being the same corrupt crony companies, and it will be difficult for new entries. When we say privatization, we mean deregulation as well. And when we say deregulation, we do mean privatization as well. It's a liberalization as a package deal. But yeah, so that is this week in SOEs. Let's move on to a different topic, not much better than this. Apparently, and I actually just heard about it today, I don't know if this has been coming along for a while now, the South African Police Service, is it the SAPS and Mpiyakhe, they want to start taking DNA from South Africans at birth and then using that to create a database of like a new identity system for identifying criminals when they're older or something. I don't know. Do you have more details?
I thought we could start cloning people. I was getting excited. I'm ready for Star Wars, guys.
The police has been tabling amendments to the Criminal Procedure Act. One of those amendments was to have to take DNA samples from Schedule 8 offenders in the Act. So people who have committed things like sexual violence, treason, people who have been found guilty of those crimes. So they take their DNA, so it's in a database. And then the Minister of Police, Peggy Tyler, stopped that process and said, okay, guys, figure out for us if we can take the DNA from all South Africans, not just people convicted of crimes. So for me, it seems like a clear violation of, just our rights as South Africans. I mean, what rights does the government have to tell me that I should give it all my biological information I mean, we always talk about, you should have control of your data and all of these things. Then there's no more important data to me than the data stored in my DNA. And so if we should be able to have control over the data, I would like to have an opt-out of this system.
Yes.
It's fine if it's voluntary. If government says, okay, if you want to put your child in this database, fine, yeah, you can do it. Maybe we can, maybe it will be better in you for somewhere. Maybe you'll be first in line at Home Affairs or something. I don't know.
Okay, then I might sign up now. After all,
it's sounding a lot better.
I dropped my liberty principles very quickly.
I'm just saying, like, if there's not they want, if they just want to make it voluntary, it's fine, as long as there's an opt-out. But if it's compulsory, then I think it's unjust, it's unfair, it's a clear violation of my rights to protect the bodily integrity of my child.
Yeah, and I mean it's also an issue of there's a premise and a principle at play here. I mean, it may just be that they can't really do anything with your DNA. Sure. But at the end of the day, you have to ask, why is the government taking this? And really based on what right are they taking this? Where does government have the power to do something of this nature? Because the moment we accept these principles or the premise of the intervention itself, then in the future they can come up with the Chinese social credit system and say, no, but I mean, what's the problem? You're allowing us to take DNA samples from your child. Now, what's the problem with us embedding a chip or something in your neck so that you get the discount at a store, but also we'll know when you're in and out of the country. So, I mean, it is a slippery slope. I've never been sure why people call the slippery slope a fallacy, because it's an actual thing, especially when you deal with government and government interventions. It's something we need to be extremely mindful of. And I mean, is this really something South Africa has a problem with? Do we really need to get this advanced when our police are hopelessly incompetent, hopelessly corrupt, when we have very basic brick and mortar problems to solve, like proper training, leaving law-abiding South Africans who have firearms for safety, leaving them alone to take care of themselves? There are real ways to secure South Africans against crime. This, I don't think, is necessarily one of them.
Just to give more context, for me, what just freaked me out was it really raised my anarchist paranoia there, because what happens if you have a government, like an oppressive government, like what we see in the rest of Africa, and then like what the people in Hong Kong are doing now, covering their faces. Government just needs to get your DNA. It doesn't matter if you've covered your face or whatever, you're protesting against the government. You just need to get your DNA, whether you were drinking something during the event, whether they have agents that just take a snip of hair or whatever it is. It's like, there's a real cost to allowing government to know everything about you when they don't need to know those things about you. Because now it becomes much harder to protect yourself if the state ever becomes oppressive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, these are things that we should be very concerned about, even if we don't totally understand it. Like I said, it's the first time today that I heard about it, so I'm not totally sure about what's going on. But I mean, I think our gut reaction should be to say no. There are far simpler things. There are far more pressing things that government should be concerning itself with, and definitely far more pressing things that government should not be concerning itself with. But yeah, so this is something that I think we should all look into and definitely have a healthy aversion to. Is there anything else that you guys think is notable from this week in South Africa's collapse?
What do you mean in the collapse? I thought things are turning around now.
Oh, geez. No. Oh, yes, the investment drive, of course.
Oh, right.
We're selling a product with a latent defect. So in law, that is called fraud. And one President Cyril Ramaphosa needs to be taken to court because that is exactly what he's busy with here. He's misrepresenting the product South Africa, which he's selling, saying that things are turning around and he and his government are dedicated to fixing things. I mean, that's a total lie.
You can only live on rhetoric and hope for so long. And I'm not saying it's not important, and part of politicians' job is trying to get people, invested in the unity and one South Africa for all and all that sort of thing. But reality sets in at some point. Rassie Erasmus could have said before the World Cup, we're going to win the World Cup, you believe in us, whatever, and then they lost then they could have lost to, I don't know, Scotland or whatever. But then they actually won it. So the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, exactly.
It's people, that's part of our work as well, is trying to, for ourselves, connect the dots and help other people along these things aren't happening in isolation. It's not in a vacuum. Like when you go to the shops and your food costs more, of course it could be the supermarket increasing the costs, but that's probably very likely due to the increase in the petrol price, or increase in regulations, or that sort of thing. So these things are connected, and they have a real impact in your lives every day. When you travel to work, when the cost of petrol has increased for you. So yeah, I don't, you need to look at what's going on in the background.
Yeah.
There are like shoots. What are they called? The shoots of hope, the green shoots. Like with this SAA thing now, for example. So I don't want to make out that it's all doom and gloom. But like you say, and people bring up the slippery slope fallacy. Tyranny comes in steps, in small steps. It's not going to happen overnight. We're not saying because government is wanting to take our DNA, it's going to become oppressive.
Yeah.
It just increases the potential much more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So look at like how these things influence each other in the general direction. It's the taking your DNA. It's taking property and amending the constitution. It's nationalizing healthcare. It's wanting to take to do prescribed assets. There's a whole bunch of things.
Self-defense is a reason to own a gun. From the same person, from the same police minister.
Yeah.
So it seems like this guy really is aiming for a police state here, because all these things are like it's elements of a police state. You have people's DNA. They already have all our fingerprints. They have our ID numbers. Now they want to take away self-defense as a legitimate reason to own a gun. So one of the Schedule 8 offences are all the offences under the Firearms Control Act. And so imagine now, because you decided, okay, they're not taking my gun, I'm keeping my gun. And then they use your DNA to track you somehow, like to look at, okay, we know that he was here drinking at, I don't know, Starbucks or something. Okay, so he was here. Even though he wasn't using a credit card or anything, we can still track him because of his DNA. And so, like, things like that might sound far-fetched, but just remember, when you give government the power, you don't control what it's done with that power when you've given it.
Yeah, and this government isn't known for subjecting its conduct to democratic vote. It says we've been elected, and then they do what they want. So that's been a characteristic of this government and others. So yeah, is that where we're going to end it off, guys?
Yeah, I think we've covered most of.
So thank you
the
for
biggest issues.
Well, there are obviously more, so keep your eyes on the news. So yes, thank you for you watching this week's Free Marketeers. We're definitely planning on being back next week, so don't give up on us yet. Please remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel. It's the big red button right under this video. Like us on Facebook, that is Free Market Foundation South Africa, or in the URL facebook.com/FMFSA. Follow us on Twitter, that's @FMF South Africa. And please visit our website, www.freemarketfoundation.com. Thank you and have a great weekend. Cheers.